depends on the type of artificial sweetener we're talking about, and depends on how you're dealing with sugar. So if you're somebody who's very lean and who has a very high carb tolerance, maybe because of age, maybe because of their current body fat, maybe because of their activities, maybe because of their metabolism, they may actually do totally okay with a couple of sugary drinks a day. But if they're versus a specific artificial sweetener that really messes up their digestion, and I've seen this with certain people, they get a lot of digestive issues. So in that case, the artificial sweetener could be way worse for that person at that point in their life versus actual sugar.
I only was wondering what your opinion is on like zero calorie things. Like I know there are like sauces and
Mhm.
a bunch of different things which have like 0 calories, so like the um, stevia sugar, which is like the fake sugar and stuff. Do you use those, or
Okay.
what is your opinion?
So I'm gonna give you my opinion, but take it with a grain of salt because my opinion has definitely changed over the last 5, 6 years. And how I think now may not be how I necessarily think in the future, but it's definitely different than how I viewed things in the past and how I was organized my diet. So there's a lot of research on different artificial sweeteners and different zero calorie flavor enhancers. And a lot of the research says that they're pretty safe, or at least suggests that it's pretty safe. But I've been talking to some actual researchers, scientists, or people who have worked with scientists and people who are researching specifically artificial sweeteners and flavor enhancers. And what I got is that there's a lot of different corporations have interest in that research and they're funding the research. And if you are, let's say you work in a lab and say Coca-Cola or Nestle come to you and they tell you, you know what, we're going to give you this grant. We're going to give you money. And I want to see what you guys are going to find about, I don't know, sucralose, for example. Not sucralose, but what was that artificial sweeteners again with S? Let's say an X product. I want you guys to research this product. And you're the scientist, you do your research, you find something. And if the people who gave you that money don't like your results, they're probably not going to give you another grant. They're not going to give you more money. So there is this sort of incentive to show a specific result. So a lot of the research is in a way biased and skewed because of the dynamics and because of the people sponsoring that research. So if there is interest and somebody or organization stands to gain something from a specific result, there's probably going to be some bias in the research. I'm not saying this is true for all research, but something to keep in mind. And also the way the research is being evaluated, it's not ideal. So in a sense, let's say again, same dynamic. Somebody gives you money to sponsor your research, you find certain results, and maybe you're looking for very specific results, like you're looking to show that, for example, this product is safe or something similar. But then this research has to be reviewed. You may be thinking like, that's awesome, because if you try to bias your results towards a specific outcome, there's going to be other people who are going to point out this, and your research is not going to make it to a, say, a scientific journal. But what most people don't know is that you yourself, say the scientist or whoever's doing the research, you pick who's going to evaluate your paper, and you're probably going to pick somebody who you know, and the people who are going to review your research, they also know that they're reviewing, or they know who conducted the research. So in a sense, there could be that dynamic. I'm not saying, again, this is happening all the time, but there is sort of this dynamic where you scratch my back, I scratch your back, because I'm reviewing your paper, and I'm probably gonna say some good things there when I review it in a positive way, because I know that maybe in a couple of months I'm gonna publish a paper, and I'm probably gonna reach out to you to review my paper. So there are a lot of hidden dynamics there, and even though there's a lot of research showing that artificial sweeteners may be safe, I wouldn't necessarily say that it means that, how do I put this? There's a lot of bias. There could be a lot of spin, and it doesn't mean that a lot of research showing a certain outcome necessarily means that the product is going to be okay even though a lot of reviews are saying this. There could be a lot of negative reviews, but they may not match the same number as the positive versus negative. So what I've learned, again, talking to some really smart people, is this, not my opinion, this is what I've got from other folks who have been in the industry, and I'm not going to mention any names, is that with a lot of these artificial sweeteners, even though they are deemed safe, they're deemed safe in the short term, but there's not a lot of specific research in the long term and how artificial sweeteners affect your long-term health, your gut health, and your hormonal health as well. So even though taking some, say, for example, an artificial sweetener or flavor enhancer may not necessarily make you sick over the next couple of months, and this usually the span of the research. It's not going to be a lifetime. It's not going to be over the next 20, 30 years. It's very, very rare to get research like this. You're going to be okay. You're going to be feeling healthy, but over a long time, over a longer period of time, you may develop some other issues, especially if your gut microbiome is affected in a negative way. You get constantly exposed to a certain, let's say, it could be a toxin, or at least your body can treat it as a toxin. There could be some negative effects that could lead to some potential health problems in the future. So again, I know I'm not really answering your question, and it's not, I'm giving you very general things. My own stance, my bias stance, based on what I know so far, is that artificial sweeteners may not be so safe based on the research that we got, because there's a lot of spin, there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of corporate money, there's a lot of even certain politics are involved, especially in the US. It can get pretty complicated. So even though a lot of the research does suggest, doesn't necessarily state exclusively that artificial sweeteners are safe, and of course depends on the type of artificial sweetener that we're talking about, there could be some potential health hazards, especially if you overconsume them. So my personal opinion, biased opinion, is that I try to minimize them as much as I can, and ideally I try to avoid them and not have any if I have the option to do so. But this doesn't mean that, I mean, if you're having some whey protein powder, most of it is going to be flavored with some kind of an artificial sweetener. If you can opt in for just unflavored protein powder, which, by the way, tastes horrible. So you're making a trade-off there between taste and maybe health. I'm not saying necessarily health. So there are options, but a lot of the low-calorie foods and a lot of the options that we have to dealing with just hunger and satiety and cravings and just feeling that we're actually not sacrificing too much the taste aspect of food is going to involve some kind of a flavor enhancer. So it is for you to decide how much of an issue it is for you, because right now it's going to be very individual and we're not 100% sure what is going to be the health impact. If you want to play it safe, I would say avoid any kind of flavor enhancer as much as you can, especially artificial sweeteners, 0-calorie options and whatnot. I would avoid them as much as I can, probably try to eliminate them from the diet if possible. Sometimes that's not possible. But if you don't care that much about this and you're like, I'm rather skeptical about what Nikki's saying, that's okay. I myself, I'm having protein powder, which most of the time has some kind of artificial sweetener. I'm trying to avoid this, but problem is a lot of the stuff on the market, that's what I got available a lot of the times, or unless you want to pay a premium price. So that's my stance. Again, it's up for you to decide whether you want to completely eliminate 0-calorie options, whether you want to minimize them, or you're fine. You're like, okay, I'm rather skeptical and it's not going to impact my health over the next maybe 5 or 6 years. So I'm totally fine with this. And if there is potentially some impact in the future after 20, 30 years, 40 years of consumption, I don't really care because I'm going to be old. I'm probably going to be dead. That is for you to decide.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the insight. Yeah, I definitely think so. My personal opinion is that I think it's definitely a better alternative than actual like sugar or like for example drinking like a Diet Coke. I think is not as bad as drinking like a normal Coke or like a Dr. Pepper or like these other crazy sugar things, because sugar in general is, I think, worse than artificial sugar, at least what studies and stuff show. I mean, yeah, obviously there can be
I would
bias.
say depend on the individual.
Yeah.
because depends on the type of artificial sweetener we're talking about, and depends on how you're dealing with sugar. So if you're somebody who's very lean and who has a very high carb tolerance, maybe because of age, maybe because of their current body fat, maybe because of their activities, maybe because of their metabolism, they may actually do totally okay with a couple of sugary drinks a day. But if they're versus a specific artificial sweetener that really messes up their digestion, and I've seen this with certain people, they get a lot of digestive issues. So in that case, the artificial sweetener could be way worse for that person at that point in their life versus actual sugar. But you may take somebody else who's like overweight and they're trying to lose weight and they have terrible insulin, they have insulin resistance, and for them, actual sugary drinks may be very bad, but the artificial sweetener alternative may actually help them reduce their caloric intake, reduce their carb intake. And let's say they're having something like stevia, which is supposed to be the healthiest, one of the healthiest options there in terms of flavoring, that doesn't have any calories. In that case, that could work out amazing for that individual at that point in time. So I wouldn't say one is worse than the other one. It really depends on who we're talking about and what exactly we're comparing there.
That's fair. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for me, right now, I'm trying to lose weight, so that's why, yeah, I'm just taking some of the artificial flavorings, like stevia, for example. I mix that with my oats and milk just to make it a bit more flavorful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that, and also I'm trying to drink wise, for a dinner, for example, or I like having something like a soda, but instead of drinking the sugary stuff, I usually just get the sugar free
Mm-hmm.
things and just drink like a can there, because I don't. Yeah, for me, I still want to enjoy and have flavor and whatnot. But other than that, I usually just drink water throughout the day. Uh, yeah, but I think that's answered my question pretty much.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It depends on what your goal at this point in time is. And of course, you may do certain things right now that may not be ideal long term, but to get you closer to your goal during this specific portion of your journey, may be totally fine. You may be eating a certain way. A good example is you want to get to a point where you have a six pack. You want to get very, very lean. And getting there and maybe staying there for a while, for a couple of months, enjoying six pack, may have no negative impact on your long term health. But if you're going to get super lean and stay very lean for a long period of time, I would argue that for most people, that's probably going to be a bad idea, and it's going to have more of a negative impact on your life the longer you spend there at that body fat percentage, compared to just getting there for a while, seeing, okay, I got this, it was a good achievement, but now I want to add a little bit more of that fat that I've lost. Maybe not get to a point where you lose all of your ab definition, but maybe not try to get super ultra lean all the time. So with a lot of these choices that we're making, we're just considering the long-term goal, the short-term goal, and what works at this point in time. And honestly, you can make some really bad choices, but if they help you go through this phase, that's okay. Man, you can do some aggressive dieting and it could be totally fine if you're just trying to, for example, it's the holidays, you want to lose a couple of pounds and you want to go very aggressive with your diet because, after this, you're going to be eating a little bit more and you want to just have some extra buffer there. Man, you can just go all in for 1 week and then create a bit of a buffer for the holidays to account for the fact you're going to be eating a little bit more. So all kinds of different strategies. I wouldn't say there's anything that's very bad or anything that is super good and you should be doing all the time. If you're traveling, you may end up eating some fried food or maybe some junk food because that's the only option that you have. I mean, you're choosing between starving and eating some bad food. Yeah, a couple of days of eating junk food, it's not going to kill you.